Have you ever listened to a really interesting conversation and thought, I want to share my opinion on this? Maybe you heard a hot topic dialogue on a podcast or radio show that sparked a conversation between you and your spouse, family members, or friends. That conversation helped you understand your own life and relationships better and made you feel connected and important because someone listened and your opinions matter. That's why Toby and Shelley are bringing you Headlines. Join us for authentic conversations to explore ideas, opinions, experiences, and real-life stories. Live on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Come chat about life with your friends. Hello, and welcome to News and Views. We're going to be updating that intro this week, hopefully before Saturday. And we are happy to be here. We're happy that you're here. And we're looking forward to having a great conversation tonight.
I could like conversation about a lot of things happening this week.
There's
by the way.
Bunch of stuff.
Bunch
of stuff going on.
So a couple of things. Number one, do me the favor that before you leave, you like our show, share it with your family, your friends, your neighbors, your business associates, the entirety of your social network. And finally, if you're not already a subscriber, this would be the ideal to subscribe. Make sure you click the notifications bell. And that way, every time we schedule or start a live stream, you'll be immediately informed as a result in the know. And then wanted to let you know that our super chat light is lit. So if you'd like to contribute to our little project here, go down to the bottom of the chat window, and YouTube will, the friendly folks at YouTube will happily walk you down through the process of
making a contribution.
Yeah, making a contribution. Thank you for finishing that for me. So why don't you tell folks about what we're going to do tonight?
Because you just took it off the screen. Well, let's start off with some announcements. It's May the 4th. It's Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you.
Do I have a banner to go along with it?
In brand.
Brand. Yeah, brand.
Here, the blue one. The blue video.
That one right there?
There it is. Oh no, there's no sound. How sad.
May the 4th be with you.
Yay. It's also my wedding anniversary, 38 years. Ding, ding.
Yay, you. Congratulations. Yeah. That's amazing. 38
and
years.
We're still alive.
Yeah.
We're still here.
38 years and almost retired.
Yes.
A couple more years to retire.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Who knew we'd ever get this old? What else is going on, Toby?
38 years of marriage.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm halfway through that.
Mm-hmm.
At 38 years. I'm at let's see. 18 years.
18 of marriage?
No, of being single.
Oh, being single.
Yeah.
You've been with me for 10, so that's kind of.
No, I'm still single. You're happily married. I'm happily single.
Yeah, but we've been together.
Yeah, actually, our partnership is nowhere as, I don't want to say contentious. I actually had very good.
Okay, well then we'll move on.
Okay, move on.
You were going to talk about drones or something.
Yeah, I did want to mention that I haven't done a lot of drone footage this year. And the reason is, that old thing about March comes in like a lion I don't remember what it is. Well, March came in like a wind-blowing lion, like a lion that was going, went out by a lion, went into April, blue wind, and around here
blue wind
wind, and has continued through May. So this is the first weekend that the American Meteorological Society is predicting we're not going to have any wind. I'm going to go fly some drone and get some pictures of the Rio Grande and Santa Fe and La Conquistadora. I'm just making up stuff at that point. But yeah, I'm going to go some drone work. So we may have some drone work for you next week just to show off, because it has been a long hiatus of lack of no wind.
And I wrote a wonderful LinkedIn article. If anybody's interested, you can go find it at, I make it easy. It's LI for LinkedIn, ShelleyCarney.com, li.ShelleyCarney.com.
What was this one about?
Read it. It's very cool. It's about my trip to the healthcare center and the infusion center. And,
the butt shot?
Yes.
Shelley got a shot in the butt.
Yeah.
And she describes it in detail.
Go look at it.
Go look at it.
Could not look at my butt. Look at the article.
There are pictures. No, just
There are pictures. Just
There
not
are
pictures of me.
Yeah. There are pictures. It is a funny story.
So
When she tells us, it's really funny.
li.shelleycarney.com. LinkedIn, LI. Okay.
So I want to make sure.
So that should be fun.
I got to go through the questions real quick. I mean, the comments here. Make sure to the spot. They're having the discussion. We're not in the room. We join the room, and we got a bunch of people in there. Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
So let's jump into the thing everybody's waiting for.
All right. So we're going to talk about three things tonight. We're going to talk about the hearing on the motion to intervene in detail, in honestly boring detail. We want to talk about a little bit about Ukraine because there are a lot of things happening on that particular front, no pun intended. And we do want to talk about the leaked SCOTUS decision on Roe v. Wade because it's not law. It hasn't become a legal decision just yet, but we do want to talk about it so that because there's a lot of bad information out about it right now. We want to clarify some things. Okay. So let's go to the presentation. All right. So I want to talk about the hearing on the U.S. government's motion to intervene and my opinions on some of the things that took place and happened. And what I've done, and I'm probably going to have a hard time keeping this synchronized. So if I do, just forgive me. I'll just read from the slides because I have to scroll down. And I thought I had highlighted the stuff, but I didn't. So what I'd like to do is I went through the hearing, transcribed it, and pulled out the things that I thought were of significance. So this is not the whole hearing. I will have that. I will upload that later. I'm going to say tonight, but I'm still editing it. But I will eventually put it all up so that you have both the text and the audio. So don't tell them I did that for you because I'll lose my media badge. Okay, so this started with the normal things that happened at the beginning. Judge Matthew started the case at 9:45, which is what they said they would do. And he invited everybody, he told everybody who's there what they were going to talk about. And then the first thing he did was, so the attorneys that were there were Kristen Bell, representing the U.S. Attorney's Office out of Albuquerque and representing the Department of Justice, the Department of Interior. But she's a DOJ attorney. And the other one was Carl Summer representing the estate. Also in was Jamie McCracken representing himself. So this was only on the government's motion. So Greg Thompson's motion did not arise and the judge can just dismiss it without having a hearing. This one required a hearing because the motion on the government side was to intervene, to perform an intervention. So the first thing that we heard from the judge, Matthew, introduced Attorney Bell from the Department of Justice, gave her the opportunity to present kind of why they were there. All right. I wish there was a way you could see these. I can't move that window over, can I? All right. No. So what I'm going to try and do is I am going to try and play that part, and I'll probably go over, but I've tried to highlight, underline.
You could put the video up here, the YouTube video, if you wanted, and then I can watch it from there. The chat.
You mean this? Oh, I see what you're saying. Let me do that.
It'll be a little bit delayed, but
yeah, give me a second, folks. I want to give Shelley an opportunity to make sure she can see the chat window. So just give me 1 second so I can open this in another YouTube window for her. And we're going to do that. And then I've got to turn off the audio real quick. Give me 1 second here.
I want to make a movie.
Commercial.
Where does the...
Okay, so let it get through the commercials.
All right.
Okay, and you should get the chat window any second now.
Yes, loading.
After the commercials. Wait, that's PBS NewsHour.
What happened? You must have clicked it.
Okay, just review what's on the whiteboard, students.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right.
You're good to go.
All right. Okay, so This was the first insertion of the attorney that represented the federal government. So I've got it up there, and I'll talk about a couple of the points, but this is what it sounded like.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to begin this morning by just clarifying any misunderstanding that may occur as a result of the government's motion to intervene. To be quite frank, the government has been involved in this case, not kept up on this case. I don't have a lot of information about what has transpired in this case so far.
Which that comment alone really surprised me. And I know from experience that doesn't impress a judge. When you walk in, you say, I don't know what's going on here completely. So I'll just do the best I can. But this judge is very good at letting each of the attorneys present their part of the case. So he let her go on, right? And then, so she gets to the next paragraph. In the next paragraph, she says she's supposed to say why she's there.
The government seeks to be permitted to intervene so that it may pursue a motion for protective order as appropriate in the case to protect the government's interests. That motion is not part of the intervention because in order to file that motion, we would have to have the court's permission to enter the case. The government seeks to intervene in this case for a very limited purpose, and that purpose.
Right. So she continued to make that point that she wanted to intervene in order to have a protective order issued. And the protective order, I think the point she was trying to make, Goldilocks, it is a prohibit. It's not breaking the law. I guess I'll put it that way. The motion to intervene was to get the court to issue a protective order. The protective order is to prevent Jack Stoof from saying certain things when he was deposed by Jamie McCracken. Now, what I was disappointed to hear is she never actually made the case that there was no reason for Jack Stoof to be deposed, that he is not part of this case, right? That he's not part of the probate case, and he's not even part of McCracken's claim. It doesn't do anything for McCracken's claim. And I'll show you what happens when they talk about that some more. All right. Actually, I think I'm going to just talk about it because I'm more comfortable talking about it. So she continued. She said, the purpose of the government has been made aware that an upcoming deposition may require or seek testimony by Mr. Stoof. I'm not 100% certain. Again, she's telling the judge she doesn't have a handle on all of this. I'm not 100% certain I'm pronouncing that name. If I'm pronouncing that name correctly, the purported finder, the Fenn treasurer, that I understand to be the subject, at least in part of this litigation. So almost none of that is correct. Stoof, who is the finder of the treasurer, is not part of this litigation only by the fact that McCracken requested to have him deposed. But she could have made a case that there was no reason for him to be there because he's simply the finder of the treasurer. It is not part of the estate. The claim is made against the estate, not the finder of the treasurer. They didn't make that case. And that Mr. Stoof may be asked by someone, apparently not the estate, during the course of a deposition to give more detailed description about where he found the valuable items of the Fenn treasurer. I'll just use as a shorthand for this case, Fenn treasurer. The government has an interest because it is the government's understanding that there was at least some amount of search that was conducted on public land in Wyoming. And again, she's not talking with a full understanding of the Fenn treasure hunt or the Fenn treasure hunt searchers, etc. But she's doing the best. She's doing as good as she can with the information she had. And that Mr. Stoof has said that he found the treasure on public land in Wyoming. And this was actually revealed to the government in 2020 that both Mr. Stoof and the decedent, Forrest Fenn, agreed that that is where the treasure was found, meaning in Wyoming. I want to make a couple of points here. She was consistent in using, whenever describing it, it was either in Wyoming or on public lands. There was nothing from her except one citation to cover the other guy's butt, in which she used Yellowstone National Park or anything related to Yellowstone National Park. It was always Wyoming and public land. That's how she sees it, right? That's how it's been explained to her. My understanding is that this area where the treasure was purportedly found, and perhaps even some areas where it was sought, are not just public land, but public land not designed for high level of traffic by visitors, which I thought was interesting because Yellowstone is the most visited national park in the United States and actually in the world. So saying that it was on public land not designed for a high level of traffic by visitors gives you two options. Either it wasn't on Yellowstone, or that it was in Yellowstone, but it was an area of Yellowstone that didn't receive the kind of traffic that Yellowstone normally attends to. But if you look at Yellowstone's operational plan, they plan for visitors being everywhere. They don't expect, and honestly, people are going to explore Yellowstone. They don't expect that visitors are going to stay on the beaten path. They're going to look for off the beaten path options. And so the government's interest is ultimately very limited. And she keeps trying to make sure that she's putting a capsule around what she's trying to present to the judge. Now, we don't want to get in and ruin this case for you. We just want to make sure he doesn't ask those questions, or if he does ask those questions, he can ask that he doesn't have to answer them. And so the government's interest is ultimately very limited to what I'm wanting to make sure the court understands, is that the government's interest here is very limited to just making sure it has an opportunity to seek protection of that information. Okay? So this all has to... Did I?
Slide.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. In order to protect public land that may be jeopardized, which also includes not only the land itself, but some vegetation and animal species that run the risk of harm. If there's an influx of visitors to an area of land that has not been designed nor suited for a large number of visitors, which again, doesn't sound like Yellowstone to me, but okay, there's probably areas of Yellowstone that aren't. Under Rule 24 of the Rules of Civil Procedure, those are referred to as the FRCP, Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, and they basically say how courts and attorneys must behave in court, and it covers everything. She refers to 24, Rule 24. The government has an interest in the real property that may be an issue here. And what she's trying to do is use that to convince the judge that A, she has a right to be there, and B, has a right to make this case to intervene and request what was it? Let me go back here for a sec and request a it's back here, one slide. Description, I forgot. Deposition, dadgummit. All right. Anyway, she uses this Rule 24. Now, I'm familiar with this rule because of some of the work that I did in Washington. And again, she repeats that its interest in real property may be an issue, and the government seeks to intervene on this very limited issue of allowing more detailed, specific information about where Fenn treasure was looked for and purportedly found that may pursue either a protective order. That's what I was talking about. So she wants to protect not Jack, but the information that Jack has. That was the purpose of the protection order, or to be allowed in this case just to protect the very limited interest. Now, again, she was referring to FRCP Rule 24, but very specifically, I'm familiar with it. It's Rule 24, Section B, Paragraph 2. And I'm gonna blow that up for you so you can see what it looks like. So she's making her claim based on this. She's saying to the court, in kind of some way, she says, you have to do this because of this rule. By a intervention by a government officer or agency, right, on a timely motion, the court may permit a federal or state governmental officer or agency to intervene if the party's claim or defense is based on a statute or executive order administered by the officer or agency. Their job is to protect public land. Any regulation, order, requirement, or agreement issued or made under the statute or executive order. So we talked about this last week, where we know the rules, the laws, Title 36 for the National Park Service Those are the laws, regulations, and rules that cover its operation. And what she's saying is that as a federal government, a representative of the federal government, this case involves one of these conditions. And it turns out that it's 2B. Again, I know from experience, any regulation, order, requirement, or agreement issued or made under the state's executive order or executive orders. So she's claiming she has a right to be here under this, because even though it's a state of New Mexico, all courts operate on top. That we have our own rules, but at the top is the federal rules of civil procedure, and then they can be modified by each state's courts. Okay. Bell continues. Now, this is really hard to read. Let me see if I can find it here so you can just listen to it. Right. Let's see. Okay, here it is. And I'll come back to why this plays a part.
I got to double click.
Want to let the court know that I've had personally a lot of people reach out to me, and I know that the Department of the Interior has had folks reach out to it, certain officials within there, and it's not a theoretical concern. Any sort of, I'm learning, any sort of action in this case seems to spark a lot of interest. And there have been, my understanding is, things published on YouTube about this motion. There's been information put out about the government's position or why the government may be interested. And then it seems to prompt more information about the location where the treasure was searched for and where it was purported to have been found. So just, it seems that any movement in this case creates this influx of new interest in the matter. And that further heightens the government's concern, is that should a deposition go forward and there be testimony that is available publicly that allows for this sort of information to be publicly disseminated, it will result in the consequence that the government is concerned about.
Okay, so she's trying to make a case that if this information, that is the information that Jack Stoof is aware of and has already shared with the government, by the way, if this were to get out into the public, they're worried about the public all packing up their bags and getting in the back of their pickup trucks and driving to Yellowstone and starting to search. That's basically the contention they're making, okay? And it's not a bad contention. So here's the problem. So Matthew says,
thank you, Ms. Bell, but I've got some real concerns about your intervention. First of all, I don't see a claim that the government has. I understand the interest in
Have you ever had a
this
fantastic
particular
idea?
case, but
What?
I don't know where that came from.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
there's no claim in this case that the government has. Secondly, your proposed intervention on its face is going to result in undue delay in this case, which clearly is a reason for denying intervention.
So here's the bad news. He just gave her 3 reasons why he should deny this intervention, right? I thought at this point, this hearing is over. He already gave her 3 reasons, and he didn't give her any reasons that she should come back. She tries really hard to come back, but the point that he's making is you don't have a claim against the decedent's will, meaning you don't have a claim. You're not saying that Forrest Fenn owes you something, right? So you don't actually have a claim here, but that's what we do in probate court. You don't have a claim, and your intervention is going to delay my probate case, which he can't let you do. You got to have a real good reason to delay the probate case. So he's already kind of warned her that this is not going to happen, but he lets her go. It would also seem that the government has its own remedies available, such as policing the area, meaning it's post-event. So what he's saying is you already have laws in place that when somebody comes to Yellowstone and burns down or digs in a gravesite, which he wasn't aware of, obviously, they didn't bring those pictures. I would have brought those pictures and said, look at what they're doing. He said, you already have remedies. If somebody comes up and digs Yellowstone, you arrest them, you take them to jail, you put them through the court process, and you send them off for life imprisonment. I don't know. But he's telling him, you already have these remedies. And what she's trying to explain to him is, we're not looking for remedies. We're looking for proscriptions, meaning we're looking for a way to avoid all of that. And later on, he basically says, that's not a case. That's asking to prevent it in advance. That's why the Park Service exists, to prevent as much of this as possible. But then when it does happen, they have laws that enable them to react to the situation. So her case is based upon, we're just trying to make sure it doesn't happen. He's not buying it. He says, it would also seem that the government has its own remedies available, such as policing the area, which has already been made public by the publication, made public by the publication of Mr. Finn's poem, and whether there's further disclosure in this or not. It seems like that the horse is already out of the barn, and nothing that has done in this particular case is going to keep people from going to the location that's been identified in the published papers of Mr. Finn. Now, at this point, she should have made a case that the published papers of Mr. Finn indicates that this is an area within 4 states of the Western states. It's a big area. It's not the specific, and that differs from the specific location. Rather than 225,000 square miles of Western forest, you're going to reduce this to X number of acres as opposed to square miles. And again, it was a point she didn't make. I was cheering for her. I was hoping that she would. Matthew continues, and finally, number 3, your motion for protective order, you haven't given me anything to even believe that there would be a basis for allowing a protective order to be entered for the purposes of sealing information, because I haven't heard anything that would comply with our rules of civil procedure. And somebody just asked, does New Mexico? Every state has its own rules of civil procedure. But when it comes to the rules of civil procedure, the federal rules take precedence. So when you see New Mexico's rules of civil procedure or Colorado, 90% of them look exactly like the federal rules, and then they modify it based on what the courts here, how the courts here in New Mexico operated. A good example is that this started in a probate court, the Santa Fe County probate court. And it would have gone through there had not a claim been made against the decedent. The minute that claim is made, our rules say, our New Mexico rules of civil procedure say it has to move to a district court. And that's why we're seeing this now in a district court. If no claim had ever been made of Fennett's estate, it would have been a simple probate case. They would have looked at it. They would have said, make sure everybody's happy with the results. And the people that are defined in the will would have been happy, and then they would have said, "Okay, right." They would have approved it, and it would have gone forward. But because there's a claim, it moves to the in this case, the First District Court of New Mexico. So he says, sealing information because I haven't heard anything from you that would comply with our rules. And he didn't emphasize it, but he was making a point. We know you have your rules. We have our rules of civil procedure. I have a number of other problems that you need to address for me. And she went through and she started a very noble effort of trying to address each one of them in order. She says, I might be able to offer the court at this point, but the government's interest is in the real property, meaning the land, where the treasure was found and may have been looked at nearby. But I think what we're really talking about here is where it was found or purported to have been found, trying to protect that area, that real property. So now she's saying, well, it's not all about Wyoming. It's about this place where he found it, because that's what they're asking about. She made it a point to do that. Now, I do want to tell you that these are only the parts that I found interesting in all of this. So then the judge turns to Mr. Summers after he gives Bell another opportunity to present her case for him. He turns to Summer, who's the estate's attorney, Forrest Fenn and Zoe Fenn Old. And Summer says kind of the same things. He's trying to back her up. And he reminds the judge that McCracken's case was kind of flip-floppy. You know, he talks about McCracken, I'm sorry, the living Fenn, he started with, he says McCracken doesn't believe that Forrest Fenn is dead, and that he's been chasing friends of his to get information, etc. So he kind of beats down on McCracken's original reason for getting into the case, which he has published. And then he said, and we're supporting it because we don't think this information should get out and should be made available to the public. But then he does a couple of really interesting things. One of them, I think, was simply a mistake. And another was simply, and I'll explain it to you. To the solution of the case where exactly the treasure was found, the government filed an affidavit. That's me. That's our Sarah Davis's affidavit. That accurately discloses Mr. Stoof and Mr. Fenn advised the government that Mr. Stoof had found the treasure on government property and had retrieved it in 2006. Beyond that, he gave no specific location. Now, the only thing...
The specific.
Pardon me?
He gave the
specific location, meaning he gave her, we believe it was GPS coordinates. Now, the 2006 is probably a little mental error because you come up with June 6th, the 6th month, the 6th day in 2020. And I think what happened is it all just conflagrated in his mind and came out 2006. I don't believe that Mr. Summer believes that the treasure was found in 2006. Then he goes...
wants you to play that audio piece.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Who does?
Goldilocks.
Okay. Let me go back.
No.
Okay, hold on. Let's see. I got to scroll down and find it. All right, here we go. You tell me. Because somebody claimed I was making the brain fart. I wasn't making the brain fart. Here's the recording.
To the solution of this case, where exactly the treasure was found. The government filed an affidavit that accurately discloses that Mr. Stoof and Mr. Fenn advised the government that Mr. Stoof had found the treasure on government property and had retrieved it in 2006. Beyond that, and he gave the specific location. There is
okay. He said 2006. I don't believe he meant 2006.
I think he meant June 6th.
Right. That's what he started to say. So you're welcome. So let's go on. He continued. So this is the one that everybody who believes it was in Yellowstone will find supports their hypothesis. This is Summers, right? And I'll address this after he gets to speak. So actually, I'm going to play it again, all right? So this is what he says so you can hear it.
There is, as the court may be aware, a federal act called the Systems Unit Resource Protection Act that the government can use to hold a party liable for damage done to a system unit resource. The park, the national park that we're talking about, is defined as a system unit resource, and the estate has done everything it can to protect every portion of the disclosure of any location in the park, and that was for purposes of protecting the location as well as preventing any damage for which the estate might be liable or Mr. Fenn might have been liable. Our interest is in not becoming liable under that act.
Okay, so here's the point that he's making. He's claiming that he believes that the treasure was found in a location that is covered by SURPA, the System Unit Resource Protection Act. That is true of the national park. It is covered by that act. And more than protecting the national park from damages, if you're responsible, if you are not the person that causes the damages, but can be identified as the person that indirectly caused the damages. And again, I'll use the example. Let's say you're Forrest Fenn and you hit a treasure in Yellowstone. This is all hypothetical. Okay. I'm not saying this happened. And some guy goes and digs up one of the graveyards in Yellowstone. Not only can they prosecute him, which they did to the full extent of the law, but under SURPA, they can prosecute you for the damages. That's what it reads, and that's what he verifies. So technically, Forrest Fenn or the estate and Jack Stoof could be held liable for any damages that were done for any searcher looking for the treasure or looking for the place that the treasure once resided. All of that, the SERPA, all of that is fact. And he says, wow, it's covered by the SERPA and disclosure in any location of the park. And he said, yep, it was there. Well, so I started to question, how does this guy know it was? I mean, he would have to know the location. Could have Fenn told him? I always imagine that this is not a person Fenn would have told. Was he in the August 2020 conference call? There was Fenn. There was Tom Nasco, Attorney Nasco. There was Jack Stoof. There was Ranger Davis and Deputy Ranger, I don't know his last name, and other government officials. So X number of additional government officials who now know the precise location of where the treasure is. Well, if now this guy knows, I'm excluding the other government officials and accommodating the idea that Forrest is dead, there are now 5 people who know the exact location of the treasure, including Carl Summer, and he just told the judge that where it was. And if that is true, he's made himself open. He's opened himself to an accessory to a federal crime. Because if he knew that Forrest Fenn hid the treasure in a national park, if he was aware of it or became aware of it, he's now an accessory to the federal crime that Forrest committed, meaning he abandoned property, and he's an accessory to the crime that Jack committed. He didn't return the properties to the superintendent before he sells it at auction. So either he doesn't know or he didn't know what he was doing. I think one of those is true, but not the other. Again, he admitted to it's not a felony. It is a federal misdemeanor, jailable up to 6 months and $5,000 in fine, but they can go after you for more damages. Plus, if that is true, then, and it's covered by SERPA, then the Fenn family, the Fenn estate, is still at risk for all the damages associated to any damages in the park if the treasure was in the park. So I wasn't sure why he said it. And so I concluded, he's a smarter guy than that. I concluded he just didn't know. He didn't know it was not in the park any more than he knew that it was in the park. He just said what he thought he should be saying and why that attorney was there. Here's where it gets interesting. So he says that he basically, although he's not admitting that it was, what he said is, if it turns out to be in the national park, he can be prosecuted as an accessory to both crimes, and he's made his client, the estate, liable to damages. I don't know why you would do that in court. That's not just good advice, unless your claim when these things come to fruition is, oh, I'm sorry, I just used it as an example. I didn't know it was there. I've never known it was there, but we'll see. So Matthew says, well, Mr. Summer, when I asked these questions or made comments, and Summer spent a lot of time going after McCracken's claim. I want it clear on the record that I'm not opining as to anyone's claim and the merits or lack of merits of anyone's claim, because he was beating up on McCracken. But based upon your presentation, it would appear that the federal government has its own rights under its laws against Mr. McCracken or anyone else that would take some action that could cause harm to the government land. So he's just repeating what he said to Attorney Bell. He's saying that there's no there. Right? I don't see any there from my perspective sitting up here on this bench. As I asked Miss Bell, it would appear that there are remedies available to the government outside of this court, entering some time a protective order or sealing some kind of information. And again, I haven't heard anything this morning that would allow me to seal any information under our rules and the laws interpreting those rules. So he kind of repeated what he told Bell. I don't see it, guys. I don't see what you're getting at. And I think part of it is he really believes they don't have a reason for the intervention, certainly not for a protective order. And the other part of it is they still haven't explained very clearly what they're trying to do. They're still struggling with that. Then he turns to McCracken. McCracken starts, and I'm going to tell you in advance, although I do have the transcription of McCracken. I feel like I don't want to share that because it doesn't make him look very good. And it's not important. And I'll show you why it's not important in just a second. So the judge turns to McCracken, just says his name. McCracken starts by saying, yeah, this intervention is highly prejudiced to my claims. I need the solve in order to compare it to. And the judge interrupts. And this is how it went from there. The judge says, Mr. McCracken, I know you're not represented, meaning I understand you're pro se and you don't have an attorney. But that's not a consideration under this rule, under the rule, so that your claim is your claim and it will be litigated, meaning you have a claim against the estate and it will be litigated as part of a claim against an estate. But whether somebody else coming into this case lessens your claim is not my consideration, meaning you can depose Jack Stoof all you want. And it's not going to matter to your claim against the case. McCracken says, I know, but it should be considered when intervention under the law, you should. And at this point, he's giving the judge advice. A out-of-country individual giving an American, and I will tell you from experience, the British judicial system is very different from our judicial system. So you might be able to make this claim in a British court. You can't make that claim, and he stops him again. The merits of the intervention are considered by the courts, not anyone else's claim. So you can't make a judgment, Mr. McCracken, you can't make a judgment as to whether this is of any value to the claim that you're making. So McCracken continues, and I'm not going to go through this because a lot of it you've probably already read before in his initial claim, and then the motion in his claim for the motion to counter the motion to intervene. So I'm not going to go through it. It was hard for me to listen to. But then at the end, Matthew says, Mr. McCracken, this is the judge, Mr. McCracken, part of your argument seemed to favor the intervention when you're talking about what's going to happen. And honestly, he did a better job of describing why the government was intervening than the government did. I mean, he went through all the detail of what he was going to do and why the government is intervening. And then he claimed a First Amendment right, which is this doesn't fall under the First Amendment right. He says, when you're talking about what's going to happen, but so you're aware, okay, the motion does not turn on whether there is irreparable harm. That's the protective order. This is a motion for intervention. I don't know if that makes a difference to you and your argument, but I will give you the benefit of that. So he's giving him a lot of leeway so that if it does change your argument in any way, you can speak up. So what he's saying is your argument was very, very good. If anything, it was in favor of the government. If you'd like to change it, I'll give you a chance. Because again, he's pro se. McCracken says, my argument hasn't changed. The point is they are intervening, as I understand it, to solely get a protective order. And if there are no grounds for that protective order, there should be no grounds for the intervention. That's the point I'm making. Matthew makes it very short and brief. He says, all right, thank you. That's not a correct understanding of the law. So just so you're aware, thank you for your presentation, Ms. Bell. And he goes back to the attorney to talk about it. And she goes back and she repeats a lot of what she had said earlier. But I thought this was interesting. And this relates to the the comment that Summer made about Attorney Summer made about SERPA and the national park. She says, I think we've heard a lot. So I'm imagining that when he said that, we didn't get to see the video part of this. So I'm imagining when he said, oh, it's SERPA National Park, she must have gone like, rolled her eyes. I think we've heard a lot of support of this morning. I think we've heard a lot of support of that this morning, just in terms of these issues in that the government's real property, and she says in what I'm going to call a snide voice, the national park property is squarely at issue in the mind of at least one party in this case. Well, we know who was in there. We know that Summer was in there. We know that she was in there. We know that Kraken was in there and the judge was in there. So she was referring to Summer, who when she said national park property is squarely at issue in the mind of at least one party in this case. She was covering her case. My guess, and this is a guess, she needed to make sure that the national park didn't become the issue, or SERPA. But what she was doing to Summer, and they probably had a little conference afterwards, what she was doing to Summer is, don't get that in your head. Get it out of your mind. Because what the next question she would have to ask Summer is, do you know that the geographic coordinates were in the national park? And then she goes back to her office and starts filing warrants. So she basically, that was a warning to Summer that, like, don't put that in the case, buddy. You're off the reservation. Bell responds, first of all, in response to an argument made this morning, there's no reason that this court, where this matter is being heard, cannot take action. She's going back to her Rule 24, cannot weigh the interests of the parties, including, and she's telling the judge, there's no reason why you can't do this. Cannot weigh the interests of the parties, including the government. If the government is allowed to intervene and make a determination about the evidence that might be sought or might be put before the court, there's no reason that can't occur, and speak to the government. So again, she's trying kind of a last step, to convince a judge, a separate injunctive action in federal court that would then have to tie into this probate. And she's warning him, this is a warning to the judge, if you want me to go to a federal judge and get an injunction and protective order that prevents Mr. McCracken from deposing Mr. Stoof, or at least participate in the deposition so that we can object, you know damn well that's going to lengthen your case, because I can do that. She doesn't say it that way. A separate injunctive action in federal court that would then have to tie into this probate matter to try to either prevent the deposition from going forward at all, or prevent the testimony in the deposition that has to do with the location. So if you're telling me that's my only remedy, Judge Matthew, I'm going to do it. But quite simply, this forum is the most appropriate forum. He's actually trying to help him out. This court is best suited to evaluate whether the evidence that may be sought by Mr. McCracken is necessary to the court's role in this probate matter to resolve the issues that need to be resolved in this case. So she's saying to him, you're the one that should be doing this. You shouldn't be asking me to get federal injunctive release, ask another federal judge to get injunctive release, because it's going to slow your case down, and you have the authority to do this and not let this get information. Now, I still feel like she hasn't made a case as to why this information has this kind of value, SERPA or not. I don't think that they did a good job of that, and I think part of that is the only thing she has to have from this is probably Davis's affidavit and a couple of telephone conversations with Davis. So Matthew concludes, thank you all for your presentation. Let me, so you can hear it. Let me scroll down here. So you can hear what he said specifically.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your presentations this morning. I'm denying the motion. I don't believe that the government has satisfied Rule 24B2. I further believe that if this intervention would be allowed, given the fact that the government does not have any claim in the estate, it would only serve to cause undue delay. This morning's purposes, I am denying the motion. I think the government also has its own remedies that could well be pursued in a different form. I will enter an appropriate order.
But so he's denying the motion, but he's advising the government that you have your own remedy and almost challenging her like, okay, go get an injunction, go get a federal justice injunction, which if she hands that to him, he has to allow that injunction and then make a determination as to why it has to be allowed, but he has to have another hearing, and then he has to determine if it's good enough for a federal justice to to force that injunction and go from there. But again, what she was warning him was, well, if you're going to make me do this, I'll do it, but it's going to cost you time and all that. So that was the case. So I'm going to share with you, since this is my channel, I'm going to share with you my opinions. Number one, I still do not believe it was in Yellowstone. Summers referring to the park and the Supra creates a whole bunch more problems for him. I think like the 2006, he thought he was helping. If I say it's in Yellowstone National Park, if I say that it was in federal lands, he thought he was helping the feds, and the Fed came back with it, and she says, well, apparently it's in one guy's head, and she didn't claim it was accurate. She didn't claim it was true. She just said, well, even another person thinks it was in the park, which does fall under SERPA. So I think that was I'm not going to say a mistake. I'm going to say he doesn't know where the treasure is. He is not one of the in with the in crowd. So he doesn't know where the treasure is. Like everybody else, he assumes it's in Yellowstone. And if it is, he's in trouble because he admitted to being an accessory to a crime. So that's number one. The number two, I wanted to imagine what I would do if I was Jack after this case took place. McCracken didn't make a really good case for Jack being involved. Jesus kept saying, I need this information to prove my case, but he never explained why he needed the information to prove his case. He never made that connection. And we're talking about his claim against the estate. He tried to do it. It just didn't come out. As I said, I don't want to play it. I'll put this up eventually so you guys can look at it, but I would be embarrassed for him on his behalf. So I started thinking, what am I going to do if I jack? Do I take the fifth? No, you don't take the fifth because there was no crime committed. Let's assume that it wasn't in Yellowstone, right? If Jack, I'll say it this way. If Jack takes the fifth and doesn't release the information, it was probably in Yellowstone because he's not going to admit to a crime. He's protecting himself from admitting to a crime. If it wasn't in Yellowstone and he takes the fifth, he has committed a crime because you can't use the fifth. You can't invoke the Fifth Amendment for self-incrimination if you didn't commit a crime to be incriminated by. So it would be like me the other night. I said, I'm always driving fast and stopping cars. I made that up, guys. I don't really do that. I'm a very safe and sane driver. Yeah.
He's the grandpa.
Yeah.
At the side of the road.
Yeah.
Watching all the cars go
by. Yeah. But if I was in a case and they said, do you drive fast? And I said, I'm going to invoke my Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate myself. And I've never driven fast. I have just committed a crime by using the Fifth Amendment not to incriminate myself. So there is no benefit if it wasn't in Yellowstone. There is no benefit to Jack incriminating himself. So how does he get around not answering the question, which we know Jamie is going to ask? Based on what I saw in McCracken's presentation, and honestly, if you go back and read his motion of last week, there was nothing new today. He basically read it verbatim, for lack of a better way to describe it. So based on what he said and how the judge responded to it, if I was Jack Stoof, I would have my attorney on the deposition, which you're supposed to do anyway. McCracken isn't represented by an attorney, by counsel, so there would be the three of them. So Jack, his attorney, and McCracken. When you're in a deposition, let's say I'm in a deposition for a divorce case. Let's say it's one of my divorce cases, and I'm in a deposition, the opposing attorney, and boy, I did not like this guy, and he didn't like me. John Petrillo, I still remember his name.
We're getting off.
Sorry.
Topic here.
So let's say I was in a deposition, and John Petrillo said, "Did you steal money from your joint account?" And no, this is not a good one. Let me do it another way. John Petrillo said to me, "Did you?" I'm trying to think of one that would have applied because I was a monster when it came to these things. Did you decide to buy your 2002 Corvette so you could impress the girls? My attorney would object on the basis of it's irrelevant and has no bearing on the case that we're talking about. So remember, the case we're talking about is the probate case for Forrest Fenn's estate. The claim against it is that Forrest Fenn's estate owns Jamie McCracken money because he knew where the treasure was. So when Jamie McCracken asks Jack Stoof, where was the precise location of the treasure? That is not related to this case. That is not related to his claim. And that claim is not related to the case. And the judge told him that today as he went through his list of things. And he said, apparently you don't understand the law. So all Jack has to do is have his attorney say, I object, irrelevant, and not related to the case. I think that deposition will occur. And I think Jamie McCracken, I can't tell you what he's going to tell us, but my guess is legally, Jamie McCracken will not get the GPS coordinates to the location of the treasure, because the judge today, basically, when he said you're making the government's case, that's because Jamie tied his claim to understanding where Fenn hid and Jack recovered the treasure, and the judge warned him, you don't understand the law. Your claim has nothing to do with where this treasure was, because the decedent doesn't have anything to do with the treasure. The treasure belongs to the guy you're deposing. And if he doesn't want to tell you, he doesn't have to. There is nothing in the law that would require him to answer that question. So as much as Jamie has presented a good case that I think might work in a British court, the judge told him today, you helped the government, and that's not the way the law works. That was the two most striking sentences in today's hearing. So the deposition is going to go forward. I think that the government may very well look for a federal judge to intervene with an injunction that basically says, we can't allow this man to be interviewed or deposed without one of our representatives there to protect our rights, our property, meaning the land. So that may or may not occur by Friday, because the deposition is on Friday. It has to open there. They have to present it to Judge Matthew, and he has to agree that it's a valid injunction and that they can be there when the now, it also gives Jamie the opportunity to to file a counter motion, but based on what I saw and heard today, I just don't see how the judge is going to buy into another one of his, like, here's why it's weird, where the judge gets to say, apparently you don't understand the law. So those are my predictions. Prediction 1, it wasn't in Yellowstone. Prediction 2, we will not get that. Jamie McCracken will not get the location out of Jack Stoof. And prediction number 3, the feds will file a federal injunction with a federal judge, they'll get a federal judge to file the injunction. So on a federal level. Let's see. It was in no. That's a hypothetical, Michael. Purely hypothetical. Mike says, then why meet with him at all? Because it's part of this probate case, right? You have to meet with you have to meet as a judge. You have the responsibility of to meet with anyone who has a claim, and then you have to resolve the claim. And basically, what he did today is he denied the government's claim. That has nothing to do with where it was. That where it was is not related. There is nothing about where the treasure was that it is related to this case. Nothing, as far as this judge is concerned. You can talk about where the treasure was and how much protection the land needs and stuff like that. And basically, he said, doesn't apply to this case. You don't have a claim. Where the treasure was is not related to this case. And if I was Jack Stoof's attorney, I would take the judge's words. And when Jamie tried to depose my client, I would say it's not related to the case, Bubba. Sorry. Let's see.
We had a super chat up there.
Oh, I did. Did I miss it?
About 40 minutes ago.
Where?
Keep going.
Whoa. Look at that. It's still up there.
Going and going.
Damn.
There it is.
There it is. I don't know how they do that. Nanya Business says $25. Thanks for sharing the audio and your detailed analysis. That's what it is. It's a detailed analysis. Doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. If I was in court, the judge would say, apparently you don't understand the law.
Probably so.
Probably so. All right. So that's all I got for you on this topic tonight. We're going to go on to our next topic, which is the Ukraine. All right. I got to close this window here so I can bring up some maps. Okay, so that's where I stand. I'll leave you again with my hypothetical predictions, and that is, what did I say? The treasure chest was not in Yellowstone. The McCracken will not get the exact location out of Jack, and the federal judge will file an injunction, will allow an injunction. So that means this case is going to go on just a little bit longer.
Yep.
Okay. And if you want to disagree with me, let's see.
May do so. Because everybody's entitled to their own
So
opinion.
here's a good question. Oh, oops, wrong one. Sorry. Here's a good question. Toby, why would Jack and Forrest Fenn meet with the Yellowstone Chief Ranger in the first place if it wasn't in Yellowstone? So that's a self-answering question. The only reason I would meet with a chief ranger to discuss the location of the treasure is if I knew it wasn't in Yellowstone, because if I told them it was in Yellowstone, I've committed a crime and Jack Stoof has committed a crime. And technically the treasure chest belongs to the national park in Yellowstone. So why not meet with them just to say you're barking up the wrong proverbial tree? I mean, that was the case that I made the other night. Why not meet with them and your attorney and give them, so she can use her Google Earth to look at the location where the treasure was and conclude these guys haven't committed a crime? Because if they had committed a crime, the case that I made the other day, that chief park ranger, Sarah Davis, would have had arrest warrants issued for Forrest Fenn and for Jack Stoof, and she would have given Jack Stoof the opportunity to return the treasure to Yellowstone if it had been in Yellowstone. None of that happened.
Okay, Obscure Oddments, you are welcome to debate the facts of the case, but you're getting really close to being asked to leave because you're doing personal attacks. So let's cool that.
Actually, I'm going to give you I'm going to give it to you anyway because that was kind of dumb. Don't come in here with that shit. Bye. Bye, Charlie Horse. Waterman, $6.99. That's my answer to that question. I got to go find this now. Where did I put it? There we go. Let's see what else we got here real quick. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. No, you got to have evidence for the horse. Horses don't do that unless you have evidence that the water is going to be good for them. There is no evidence. There's a lot of hypotheses. Lots of hypotheses. And we'll know by Friday if I'm sure that since Jamie has pretty much documented every one of his activities, that if by Friday he gets the location of the treasure out of Jack Fenn, I'm sure we'll all know it.
Jack Fenn.
I'm sorry.
That's an
wow.
interesting.
Freudian slip, huh?
Jack Fenn.
Freudian slip there. If he gets the location out of the treasure,
Jack Fenn found the treasure in 2006. All right.
You know what? I have been against it, Copper Dan. I have been against it being in Yellowstone National Park since the beginning because legally it never made any sense to me. It never made. Every time I heard Forrest talk about it, he talked about it lovingly.
He said right out there in that the audio we played Saturday night that if it had been found in the park, then the thing that you had to do by law was give the treasure chest to the superintendent of the park, and Jack never did that.
So Cal says, I don't know that. Here's what I know. I know what was in the affidavit. I know that in the affidavit, 5 people, at least 5 people on a Zoom call shared the location of the treasure. I know as a result of that, no further action was taken legally, right? There was no warrants issued. There was no arrest taken. There was no collection of the treasure, right? Which is required by law. That's what would have had to happen. I also know that Ranger Davis waited till the next week to go out and check out the location to make sure that the location was where she had been told it was. Why would you wait a week? It was in the national park. She's 2 hours from any place in the park. Why would you wait a week to go look for this location if it was in your precious national park? None of those things happened. Now you can draw a set of conclusions from the fact that Forrest, there weren't arrest warrants issued. There wasn't a recovery of the treasure chest. That to me implies, what is she going to do? Oh, geez, guys, I'm sorry that they was in Yellowstone, and I appreciate you telling me. So have a good day. I showed you Sarah's comments on the guy that dug up the graveyard. So if you think Sarah Davis would have let Forrest Fenn and Jack Stoof and a treasure get away just by going like, hey, have a nice day, I think that's where you're missing it, brothers and sisters. I think that's where you're missing it. Let's see. Copper Factory says, I hear you talk about against it being the park. When I was searching, it just seemed wrong, but now the evidence clearly points toward the park. What is it about her affidavit that doesn't counter whatever evidence you have? Because you don't have any evidence. There is no such thing as evidence indicating that it's the park. All the evidence basically says otherwise. There is no evidence. There's conjecture. Let's see. Let me laugh about Toby saying Jack Fenn. Yeah, thank you, Treasure Warriors. That was oh, he's back. Did he come back here? I need to take. Oh, he's not. He's over here. He's not over there. I didn't block him here. I can block him over there.
Do what you gotta do, man.
Wow, look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Goodell Con.
Super chat.
Damn.
That was a super chat dance.
Wait, I appreciate you didn't put a PowerPoint up. I just did a PowerPoint, but I'll take the money anyway. Thank you, Goodell Con.
Yes.
Goodell Con's been our friend for a long time. So.
That's right.
So
been hanging out with us for a long time.
So here's, like I said, we're not going to find out on Friday. We're just not going to find out. We are never going to know where it was unless we find it ourselves. So you guys keep searching in Yellowstone. Maybe we'll be lucky and find it. Let's see. Goldilocks says, if the government doesn't pursue injunction, then it wasn't in the park. Let's take bets. Yeah, that's so. Again, I would assume that if the government heard the same case that I heard the judge make today, I think they will. I don't think they will. I don't think they'll get far with the injunction. I think what they'll do is advise Fenn's attorney to object based on it's not relevant, because the location of the treasure is not relevant. If McCracken was filing a fraud case against the now agreed to estate and Jack Stu, if he was to make that case, then I think he would have reasons, and he would have to make it that if you listen to the reasons that he's done a good job of eliciting so far, there are no good reasons why Jack should tell him where the treasure was, other than he would like to know so that he can compare it to his New Mexico solve. Well, we already know it was found in Wyoming. It wasn't in New Mexico. And you're not going to be able to make that case to anyone, because that's the point at which you start sounding cuckoo. So it's not going to happen in this case. Jack Stoof is going to waste, and this is another thing, if there are enough responses that says it's not relevant, then Jamie McCracken will have to pay another attorney for their time, because they'll ask for a ruling. He wasted our time and had nothing to do with the case. We didn't need to be there, and we want our money back. So I wish I could feel better about poor Jamie. Toby, is this kind of ending Fenn planned for? Did Fenn plan for an ending? I think I'll answer the second question first. He tried to think of everything, but there were some elements beginning with his underestimation of the potential. I don't want to be critical of a dead man. I don't think he thought of everything, but I think that it all related to the fact that he underestimated the potential of social media and media in general. I don't think he ever expected that it was going to get bigger than the 1,000 books he was selling in the Collected Works bookstore. So I also think that his ending always had a vision for this lasting 50 years. And the crazier we got, the more concerned the family got that they didn't want to be around, they didn't want to have anything to do with this, etc. And I think, so in some ways, no, it wasn't the ending that he expected or that he would have wanted. And I think part of what he would have wanted was to have passed and let everybody else worry about it, not have to answer emails every night, So no, I don't think it was the ending. Certainly not the ending we wanted, right? We were hoping for an ending that involved, well, I don't know what we were hoping. Well, one of the videos that we made was
like when you win the big prize at the end of a game show. You
Yeah.
know, you want that celebration. You want to be excited. And we just got another super chat.
Well, from, let's see. Oh, where'd it go?
Cow Lasers.
Cow
It's at
Lasers.
the bottom.
Is it at the bottom? Here we go.
Yeah.
Boom. Still love you too. We can agree to disagree. Maybe it will come out someday. I think thank you, Mike. We can agree to disagree. I would prefer to be civil about these things.
We are lovable after all.
And she is lovable. I'm not as lovable as she is. Plus, she's got this great brooch. Did you see that thing? It's made from a zipper by her mom, for God's sakes. Who does that stuff anymore? But thank you for the $10. We can agree to disagree, and hopefully it will come out someday. I hope that when it does, I'm around, because I would like to know. My first solve was south and west of Cody. So, and I still feel good about going back there if I have to. I actually I have no desire. The funny thing is, I have no desire to go back to Yellowstone. I think I have a mental block against, Copper Dan said, you never liked Yellowstone. I don't know. It's exactly that. I was never a big fan of Yellowstone. I liked Cody.
It's too crowded.
Yeah, it's too crowded, and they got the bears.
It's too crowded.
Where's bears?
I mean, you get on that road and you just sit there in traffic for the whole day.
hated.
It's ridiculous.
I hated the process.
I'd rather go somewhere like Rio de los Pinos, where there is nobody, and you can just enjoy the day.
Rio de los Pinos.
Okay.
Oh, that's the blackberry one. I don't know how you drink that stuff.
That's the last one, so
Um,
you won't have to drink anymore.
yeah. So if I'll make the offer if anybody wants to come on and debate these things. Why not? I'll invite you. We'll do a little 2-person panel. But we want to go on to other things. So if you're not interested in the state of the Ukraine and how Ukraine is doing right now, or you are not interested in the courts, the leaked court decision on Roe v. Wade, then you probably want to leave now because that's what I want to talk about. Okay.
Fair warning.
So fair warning. I'm going to give you fair warning. So I do want to talk about Ukraine first because there's a lot of stuff happening. So I'm going to go to the
Institute for the Study of
Thank
War,
you.
the ISW. What's the name of that town?
Mariupol.
Mariupol, that's it.
Okay. So let's talk about what's going on in the Ukraine. And do I have to redo this here?
Just share again.
Oh, that's
because
the
you're sharing a
presentation.
different thing.
Okay. So I'm sharing a screen and I'm sharing this and I'm saying, okay. So let's put that in the stream.
There you go.
So here's the map of the Ukraine as identified. See, this is what I can do with this new touchscreen monitor. So today is May 4th. This is the Institute for the Studies War most recent analysis of May 4th, past 24 hours. And so if you want to take that, I can.
It just wasn't at the bottom.
Oh, okay. So this is the current map of Ukraine. As you can see, the Russians have already, the red striped lines are where they were before since 2014 and 15 in the Donetsk and down here in the Crimea. What they've been doing is they tried to take the area that is east of Kharkiv, right? Oh, I need a pointer here. Right here, the east of Kharkiv. And so they're situated there. And then the area east of Kherson. Those are the biggest cities in those two respective locations. The one that was important to them was Mariupol. And Mariupol was important because it is a port city on the Sea of Azov that leads to the Black Sea, which is down here underneath the what you calls it. So the big deal was the city of Mariupol. They had been bombarding it for, I think it's like 3 or 4 weeks now. And part of the bombardment was against a number of Ukrainian soldiers that started out at 1,200. They were reduced to 500. And then eventually they were reduced to, I think the last number I heard is 150. What the UN was trying to do was trying to get, there was a bunch of civilians in the same, they were all huddled in a steel mill that had been bombed to uselessness. The Russians would like to have Mariupol because it prevents the Ukrainians. It prevents the Ukrainians from having a port to ship out goods because the Ukrainians have a lot of grains, right? And that's one of their sources of income. So they wanted Mariupol for the reason that it was a seaport, but they also wanted it because they held it for so long. And those guys, as of 24 hours ago, those Ukrainian soldiers were still holding their position, and they had gotten out. The UN had come to an agreement with Vladimir Putin that they could take the civilians out, and they kept trying, and he would shoot rockets in the area. So they made it very difficult for that to happen. It has happened. They have removed the civilians. Based on radio chatter, they believe there's still 30 children in that location. And what the Russians have been doing with the children is once they capture them, they board them onto buses and they return them. They ship them to Russia. My guess is they're going to use them for hostages. So here's the deal. May 9th, there are 2 days that were important. One day that was important to the communists. May 1st, that was May Day. That's where they celebrated the communism. The other day that was big for them was May 9th, which is when they claimed they defeated the Nazi Germany. It actually happened. Everybody else celebrates it on May 8th. The Russians celebrate it on May 9th. So every year they have a big parade in Moscow Square celebrating May 9th. So what kind of Putin has been promising is that by that time, the Ukraine would have been completely taken over, and they would celebrate in Kyiv. That's what he promised them. They would celebrate with a parade in Kyiv, and of course, none of that is happening. So he's gotten no further than the eastern part of the country over here. And his forces, his military, aren't doing well. They're not. They're a depleted military in equipment and in soldiers. They've got a lot of new soldiers that really don't want to be there, and commanders. They wiped out 8 general and there's a name for them. When you're a colonel, you're just about to become a flag officer. They wiped out 8 of them in a command post last week, and Gerasimov, who's the chief of the army, head of the army, all the armies, he's the equivalent of the joint chief, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He got away. Luckily, they flew him out of there. He left without a scratch, but he was part of that, and they left him out. So the big thing that's coming up is May 9th. There are satellite photos. Now, you got to remember, I'm not even talking about the war crimes that have been committed, the trenches that have been dug to hide the bodies of up to 30,000 Ukrainians, civilians, not military. What they're doing right now is there are satellite images, not satellite, drone images that indicate they're trying to clean up Mariupol. And so there's 2 things going on in Russia that you don't read a lot about. One is the army, and to some extent Putin, are already talking about who to blame for this disaster of his. And it's Putin's disaster. This was his idea. The army went along. They didn't go along because they wanted to. They went along because Putin told them to go along. So they're looking for somebody to blame, and kind of the intelligence community, our intelligence community, is getting the signal that they're thinking about blaming their intelligence community for the disaster. Bad intelligence resulted in this defeat. So that's the first thing. The second thing that's happening is Putin, back to the Russians, he's telling them that they're going to have a May 9th celebration of immense proportions with parades and everything, indicating that Ukraine is back in the fold. Well, you can look at that map, and that's not true, but that's what he's telling them. And so when they saw the drone and satellite images of Mariupol, they saw the Russians were cleaning it up. They're cleaning up Mariupol. They're making a way for their parade. So the expectation is so that Putin, who I'll be surprised, he doesn't hang out in war zones. So, but there's going to be a parade, and it's probably going to be in Mariupol, and it's going to be Russian soldiers, Russian tanks, maybe Russian helicopters, and a flight over of their Tu-34s. And that's what Putin is going to show, that the Ukraine thing is over. Now, I wouldn't call that the best thing that could happen, but it's the best worst thing that could happen. He's starting to realize that not only has he had a strategic loss here, but he's had a tactical loss, and he's had a loss of confidence from his military and the people that are trying to fight this war on his behalf. They have been demoralized with whatever morale they had before the war started. Their armies, we realized, remember, we thought that they were going to be taken over in 72 hours. We discovered that their armies are nowhere near the capacity and capability that we believed they were. In some estimates, the estimates were 25 to 50% of capacity and capability from our original estimates. Well, that's even lower now. It's below 25% of capacity and capability. So he's losing this war in a lot of different ways. But today, he fired rockets at Kyiv. And they now have weaponry that was provided by the European Union, by the NATO folks, that were able to shoot down some of the rockets. The others were hit in places that weren't due. They're not really. They're like our. I can't remember what we call them. That's silly.
I don't
They're
know.
not rockets. They're they're surface to
Missiles?
surface missiles, but they're lightnings, thunders. Oh, I'll have to remember it later. Somebody can type in the chat. Well, we have this.
Switchblades?
No, the switchblades are the Ukrainians. So that's the other thing. Biden got his $33 billion worth of aid. Now it's lend lease, and that's what we did with the United Kingdom back in World War II. Eventually, they have to pay us back. Now we give them plenty of time to do that. So we lend them some stuff. They have to take care of it, and when they're done, as long as they get use of it and doesn't fall into enemy hands. And then other stuff is leased. We'll lend it to you for a while. You pay for us until you've paid it off. And you don't have to start paying until after the war. So we did that with the UK. And it worked out very nicely. Everybody was happy with it. So it is a $33 billion lend-lease program, billion with a B, lend-lease program. But they've actually worked it out. So I think between now and the 9th is a very dangerous period because Putin has to perform something. The other thing that he's told that his propaganda arms are starting to say, we didn't lose the war to the Ukrainians. If we lose this war, it is to the puppet countries that are in NATO and the United States. He's going to blame it not on Ukraine. He's going to blame it on all of us, on everybody else, which is how a tyrant works, right? He doesn't make mistakes. Everybody else makes mistakes, and he just has to live with them. So between now and the 9th is going to be tremendously important in the continuation of the war, whether it gets, I'm still not, I think the probability of this ending up in World War III is not 60 or 70%. I think it's 10 or 12%. And I think that's because he doesn't want to die. He wants to be rich and live long and prosper. But I know that his military, I have a feeling that the military has passed like, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to, because now you're not only killing yourself, you're killing Russians and you're killing families. And I just don't see that happening. But the next week between now and the 9th is going to be very important as these things happen. Let's see. After 2 years, I'd crush me some Ukraine. Yeah, I don't know, Patty. I think you're in the wrong location because we are pro-Ukraine. We are not pro-Vladimir Putin. Patty. So if you are pro-Vladimir Putin, you're probably in the wrong place. Keep an eye on chat. Okay. Here, can I do that here?
Do what? Where?
I need to start issuing some. Yeah.
Some wrenches?
Yeah, I got to start issuing some wrenches, I guess. Bye, Patty.
Bye-bye. Give one to the guy who told you to watch the chat. Let him watch it.
Oh, you know why I can't? It's not a biscuit.
Because you're in the wrong account?
Yeah, I'm switching. I got to switch accounts here.
Aha.
I fix those. Now I got to watch the things again. Okay, Patty, let's behave ourselves. And copper. Copper. Oh, God.
Skip ads. Oh, I guess you don't need to worry about it. Okay. You're in the right channel.
Okay, I'm in the right channel. Okay, let's see. Where can I do that?
Bottom.
There.
There you go.
There. Okay.
Are you going to just sit here in the quiet?
Yeah, well, I'm just trying
trying
to fix some things
understand what's going on. And
yeah. Okay. So let me see.
Potato.
Is potato.
That's all.
So guys, if you see
Is
some more of this,
potato.
let me know. I just didn't pick up on it because I was yakking my head off, right? So let me fix that. And smile Dan and smile Hooli. So you can help me fix that.
What is going on? Ba-ding, ba-ding. Are you getting a bunch of Gmails?
I guess.
Yeah.
Let me see.
So next we're going to talk about
So next we're going to talk about the decision.
the leak. The leaky decisions. Everybody's been talking about this.
Okay,
leak.
so you guys have heard the news that someone within the Supreme Court, probably one of the judges' clerks, each justice has 4 clerks that work for them. And this is a plum position. You have to be an attorney. You usually come from one of the Ivy League schools and you work for them while they're for X number of years. And then you go out and work for one of the big law firms and then eventually you become your own justice. That's kind of how it works. That's why you become a law clerk. It's also a 20-hour-a-day job. They work their asses off. But they see and hear everything that these judges do. And part of being the Supreme Court is the commitment to secrecy. No ruling gets out before it's time. No ruling gets discussed in public until the judges are ready to discuss it. Well, yesterday, was it yesterday or the day before now?
Tuesday night.
Tuesday night.
No, Monday night. Monday night.
What's today? Today is Wednesday.
today's
Monday
Wednesday.
night. So it was
Monday
Monday night. An opinion that was written by Justice Alito was leaked. It was signed, and it's what's referred to as a draft opinion. That's why nothing's really happened other than the protest to it. So it was written by Alito. And it was signed by 4 other of the what I'll call, and this is not. I'm not trying to. This is not. I'm not using this in a negative way. Conservative justices: Amy Coney Barrett, Gorsuch. You're going to have to help me here. Roberts. No, Roberts didn't sign it.
Oh,
Alito, Gorsuch, Barrett, Thomas. So those 4. There's 6. We need 6. Who are the other 2? So there was a 5th, whoever the 5th was.
Right. What's his face that drinks all the beer? Kavanaugh.
Easy, Kavanaugh.
Trying to remember his name.
So 5 justices had already signed it. 5 conservative justices had signed it. The 6th would have been Roberts. He did not sign it. And so there are 2 amazing things here. 3 amazing things. Number 1, that it was leaked. That has never happened before in Supreme Court history. Never. That's just how they operate. And the person who leaked it not only will be fired, but they've basically destroyed their career. If it was one of those law clerks, whether it was a liberal law clerk or a conservative law clerk, their career in the law in this country is over. So that was the first thing. Like, this never happens. The second thing that happened is it's Alito's opinion on why Roe v. Wade, the law that, if you're not familiar with it, the law that deals with a woman's right to have an abortion, the language was to overturn that constitutional right. And you got to remember, the Supreme Court, when it writes these things, it writes opinions on how the world should behave. So it is not a law that they're turning over. They're turning over a guarantee that women have a right to make their own decisions about their own bodies. Now they're saying, Alito, in his opinion, is saying they don't have that right, that the right is determined by the states. All right? So that was the second thing. The third thing was Alito wrote it. If you haven't read it, it's available online now. You can just look it up and you can download it. It was written in what I would call a very barbaric way. He said, this is not part of our America. He doesn't seem to remember that it was the court granted the right to a woman choosing what she wanted to do with her body back in 1973. And it was a 7-2 decision of the 9 justices.
73 or 63?
7-2.
73?
Oh, 70. What did I say?
You said 73.
73.
Is that the year?
Yeah. It was a 7-2 decision, and 5 of the 7 were conservative justices. That's how important it was. So it's been in place for 50 years now. 70% of Americans who are alive today have been alive during the period in which that right for a woman to choose how she handles her body was made. 80% of Americans don't believe that this right should be taken away. So it's not a very popular decision. And worse, in the way he wrote it, like I said, it was barbaric. He said that the only reason we had Roe v. Wade, because as at the time, women, it was a crime to have an abortion. Women were going to prison. Their doctors were going to prison because they had an abortion. And that was happening in the 50s. Right. So there were a number of reasons why this was upsetting to a lot of people. And there were demonstrations in all 50 states, in all major cities, and in front of the Supreme Court. So I could tell it was interesting when the police at the Supreme Court were putting up barriers, going like, oh, okay, it's not going to go well. A bunch of crazy ladies are coming up here tonight. Right. So
I wouldn't say crazy.
Well, I wouldn't
would
say crazy.
Angry.
Angry is a good way to describe it. They didn't do any jam. They didn't overturn the barriers. They had signs that indicated how they were feeling. But the decision hasn't been made. If you're someone or you have a family member who's in the process of working towards an abortion, you can continue to do that, right? If you're in one of the states that allow it. It's not law yet. It isn't a decision. It is a draft decision that happened to be leaked. And that decision won't become a final decision until sometime at the end of June or the beginning of July, when the court usually releases its final decisions. So it's based upon the law in Mississippi that pretty much bans abortions completely. There are 22 other states, that have what are called trigger laws. The minute the Supreme Court revokes Roe v. Wade, these anti-abortion laws will go into effect in 22 states. We in New Mexico are not one of them. We have a very broad and open coverage when it comes to abortion. We also have the benefit of having Texas on one side and Arizona the other, where it is one of the more draconian 6 weeks, I think, if you don't have it in the first 6 weeks. And in Texas, they're passing a law to disallow abortion pills. So it's getting progressively worse in those states that choose to do it. That means that half the states still allow for abortions. It just means that a woman who has to have an abortion and she lives in a state that doesn't allow it has to travel to another state. That is not against the law. You can do that. You may not be able to get one in your state, but if you want to come to New Mexico,
unless you're an 18-year-old boyfriend driving a 17-year-old girlfriend across
yeah,
state
that's
lines,
right.
then you can't do
then
it.
you got a problem.
Yeah.
It's going to have to go by yourself. So, so it's not a law. If you're in the process or you have a family member in the process in the states that do allow for it, you can still do that. And we won't know whether the opinion actually occurs. Now, there are two theories out there right now as to why the opinion was leaked. Number one, it's a liberal justice's clerk who wanted to let everybody know what was coming down the pike, right? Hey guys, look at what these guys are thinking about. That's one. The one that's kind of taking hold, and we won't know until the Chief Roberts announced yesterday that they were the marshal. There's a marshal of the court. He's a legal officer. He's a peace officer. Is doing an investigation. We'll determine who it was. The one that seems to be working, and I say working is the one that's marshal is focusing on, either Alito or one of his court clerks released it to make sure they locked in the other conservative justices. Because if they agreed to this before they saw the full text of the draft, I think there are some of them that would have said, oh, wait a minute, I didn't want to go this far. this is too draconian or whatever. So the second theory is that it was Alito or one of his representatives that leaked it in order to lock in those judges that had signed up to it before they could say, wait a minute, that is not what I agreed to. Because if they turned around now after it's released and you see their names are at the top of the draft, signed to by these 4 other conservative justices. The only one that didn't sign up to it, the conservative justice that didn't sign up to it, was John Roberts, the Chief Justice. And I could see that he's still very worried about his court, how history will look at his court. No Chief Justice wants his court to look like they were political or radical, and it's starting to look like that. The most disconcerting paragraph in the entire draft was a paragraph that basically said, and this is kind of an indication, that's what I used to do to my kids. This doesn't mean this overturning of Roe v. Wade shouldn't imply that we are going after any other rights and he elucidated rights like gay marriage. Did you know there was a point at which it was against the law for interracial marriage? And he listed all the ones that if you were overturning Roe v. Wade with the other 5 conservative justices, those are the ones that you would overturn. And I think that's what upset a lot of people is he left the door open by saying that wasn't the plan. And I think that's what makes this one very, very dangerous and very disconcerting. And it's going to happen. But I think the states on either side of the algorithm, whether they're states that ban abortions or states that don't ban abortions, they're all taking actions in their own way to deal with their own states. Because basically, when you overturn Roe v. Wade, you turn it over to the states. That's what the Supreme Court does when it overturns something like that. You let the states you leave the elected officials in those states make the decision. So if you're anti-abortion, write to your state senator. If you're pro-abortion, not your United States senator. So the other possibility is that the Congress could turn it into law, could turn the equivalent of Roe v. Wade into law. But honestly, I don't think that the Congress has the stomach for it. I don't think they have the cojones for it. I think the states that ban abortion will make it even harder. They'll make it progressively harder to the point where there's no 6 weeks, abortion is banned. And some states will make it illegal and put women in prison, women and doctors in prison. And other states like New Mexico will say, no, we allow abortions in our state. If I was a doctor, I would open up clinics on I-40.
Well, that's where the Planned Parenthoods are going to be.
Yeah.
They're going to be on the borders.
I-40 before it goes into Arizona and before it goes into Texas. And then if I was, the other thing too, is they just, Mexico, I don't know, it's been, 6 months? They made abortions legal. I didn't even know it was illegal in Mexico.
Mexico.
No, Mexico.
Oh, Mexico.
They made it legal. So now if you're in Texas or Arizona, all you have to do is go across the border and find what are those OBGYNs who do that?
They have plenty of doctors across the border.
That's where your mom goes, right?
Well, yeah, she went to the dentist there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the oral
anyway,
surgeon. Mm-hmm.
That's the news for a Wednesday night. You want to do a giveaway? Do we have anybody left?
You should have done that before you changed topics.
Dang,
we'll do it on Saturday.
You don't want to do it tonight? Come on.
For the ones who stayed? Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah. Okay. Are you ready? So here's tonight's giveaway. You will get okay. Let me open this up here. I didn't set up the desk camera. So you will get 2 postcards. One is of Mariah's cabin in Louisiana. The other is the English version of our treasure poem that Shelley wrote, and then I translated into French.
A la Google.
A la Google.
and voila.
so you'll get those 2 for sure. You will also get 2 of our challenge coins, AGK challenge coins. One of them has a treasure chest on the back, and the other has a magnolia on the back because it represents Mariah's cash. And since I didn't, who was it? Stephen M. that won the other night. And I still haven't mailed it out because we've been busy. I'll mail it out tomorrow. So Stephen M. So why do I have 4 books?
Because you're giving him a choice, right?
Yeah, but we haven't
one of the 3.
published 4 books.
We're not giving this one away yet.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That's for Saturday night.
Okay. And then you have a choice of 4 books.
3.
We could have given it away tonight.
We'll wait till Saturday.
Well, I'm going to tell them what it's about. So you have a choice of 3 books. You can choose Women in Podcasting. You can choose, and these are books written by Shelley and I. You can choose A Gypsy's Kiss, which is fiction versus the nonfiction Women in Podcasting. And
fictionalized biography.
Yeah,
yes.
Fictionalized biography.
Some of it's
or
true.
you can choose Life Casting Life, again, written by Shelley and I. We just wanted to put her on the cover because she's part here. I'm down here in the little picture.
Yeah.
So your choice of book, you do get the 2 postcards and the 2 challenge coins. And all you have to do, oh, I got to go back to this.
No. Oh.
What? No.
I was like, you got to copy it first. Did you copy the question?
Oh, I didn't.
Copy the question.
Copy the question. I'm going to post the question in the chat room.
Copy.
Copy.
Now you can go back
Grandpa, go copy.
to hit all the buttons.
And then I'm gonna post it in the chat room. And the first person who puts the correct answer, and it has to be exact, wins their choice of 1 of 3 books, the 2 coins, and the 2 postcards. How's that? Okay. So let's see who it is.
Here's the trivia question.
Here's the trivia question. It'll show up
Twivia.
over in you guys. There we
It's
go.
Twivia. That's it. That's the question. And you
Copper Dan, this has always been such a taboo subject. In the end, it should probably be. We agree. It should be the states. It would be better if the Constitution supported it, but
affects half the population.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
We should be allowed to talk about something
And it's
that affects
just
half the population.
It bothers me. I have 4 daughters, and I wouldn't want them. They 2 of them live in states that pretty much have banned abortions. The other doesn't, but they haven't had the problem, right? They don't have to deal with issues like that. And if they had to, they're in a position in their lives that if they had to have an abortion,
Yeah, but if they
seem
grew
to just
up like me, they had at least 2 or 3 friends who had that issue in high school.
We did have those issues in high school.
And that's when that issue hits the most often.
Yeah.
Sometimes in middle school, in fact. And sometimes in elementary school.
So let's see. With the state saying it's a criminal act. Yeah, we don't want to. I don't think so. I think it's one thing to ban abortions in a state or put restrictions like no abortions after 6 weeks. I think it's another to put women in jail. I think that's where it gets crazy. And I think that is the slippery slope that Ken is referring to.
Yeah. Why don't you display the
although Oklahoma
question on the screen?
Let's go up here. Is that it right there? Okay, here's the trivia question. Name the talk show that Shelley and Toby produced at the Albuquerque Public Access Station.
Woohoo.
It has to be precise. So the first person that responds
with the right answer?
With a
were they supposed to text us?
No, I was going to just tell them to put in the chat room.
Oh, okay.
Because most of the people that are here are from
Zestful Aging? No.
Zestful Aging. Who was that?
Copper Factory asked, was it Zestful Aging? No, that was a podcast that we did an interview on.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. If you were originally, Colorado is one of the states that doesn't have the ban. So,
right.
Encore Entrepreneurs. That's good. Good. Yeah, we do Encore Entrepreneurs. So, what was the name of the show that Shelley and Toby produced at the Albuquerque Public Access Station?
And it was a talk show.
Copper Factory. Copper says, sorry, I was Googling. He was Googling that. Like,
Google.
Zestful Aging? Huh? Yeah. Coffee Talk. We did do Coffee Talk with...
Coffee Talk?
Yeah, we did the Coffee Talk at that little restaurant downtown with
Oh, you mean Breakfast at Lindy's?
Breakfast at Lindy's. Yeah, that's right. Breakfast at Lindy's. Sorry.
But that was not a talk show. That was
No,
an
that
interview
wasn't. That was an interview show.
thing. And that was on YouTube.
Let's see what we got. The Shelley and Toby show, Golden. Oh my God. Well done.
Daily Agenda says you public.
You public. That no hints.
You're
No
getting-
hints. No hints.
That's not the name of the show.
That's not the name of the show.
You're getting the
Leaving a legacy as an encore entrepreneur. That is.
You're just making guesses.
You're
now.
starting to make shit up, Holy. Come on. Beauty and the Brain.
Mm.
Oh, nice. That's a good one. That would be a good one, huh? Beauty and the Brain.
Boy, it's like Pinky in the Brain.
Although I resent
Boy.
not being thought of as the brain, I
Get the
guess I'll
screen
have
in
to
the
deal
shot.
with. I guess I'll have to deal with being the beauty.
You got the screen in the shot.
New Mexico. I what?
You got the screen in the
Okay,
shot.
Oops.
The other
wrong
way.
Oops,
No, the other
wrong
way.
way.
No,
Oops,
the other
gotta
way.
There you go. Comcast and Cantata.
Interesting.
Shelley and the Butt Munch.
Copper
Nice.
Factory. Copper Factory gets it.
Where Copper Factory gets it.
Right there.
Wow, Copper Factory does get it. New
Woohoo.
Mexico Media Makers. I'll give you that. I will give you some applause. Yeah. Well done, Dan. Copper Dan.
Put it on the screen.
That's
so
it. So let me see if I can find it up here. We're
you can-
New Mexico Media Makers.
That's right.
New Mexico Media Makers.
Toby and
There's
I
a-
named that show together.
and we produced 13 episodes.
13
Shelley was the
episodes.
producer. I was the technical director, and
And the mentor of the group.
and the
So I had
mentor.
to put a team together, and you helped put the team together because you brought along Sean Scott and your
Well,
son
he was part of the
Jason.
technical. They were all part of the technical team by that time. They were working for me at the public access station. But what you did as a producer, you did a great job as a producer. It was a very successful first show for a first-time producer. Although you had done a little bit with joysticks, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
the 13
she put
episode
it
too.
together. I thought
Or
I
8
had.
episodes.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can.
And which book do you want, Copper? Livecast Life, Gypsy's Kiss, or Women in Podcasting? Let us know in the chat.
You know, he says Google is is an awesome thing. We actually wrote the sentence and put it in Google to see if people could find it, at least using that, because if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't have found it. So what I'm going to do is I want to show you an episode, not an entire episode. I'll show you what it looked like because it was very stylish. Shelley did a great job with it. And we had two hosts, both friends of ours, male and female, and they were just great together. They were just amazing together.
Yeah.
So
I think
let
Mike
me
could
see.
work with anybody, but
Yeah.
Catherine's probably the same way. She could work
Yeah.
with anybody.
And
so,
they've both done a lot of film and movie work since then.
yeah,
Both of them.
good people.
They're very good people.
Good
Let's see. What I was
content
looking at? I
creators.
was looking at.
He's in radio.
He's at KOB.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's at one of the bigger stations here
Yeah.
in Albuquerque. You want to do who?
Mike, the second one.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he was in my joysticks program too.
I got to go through the. Hold on. Go through the. Oh gosh Almighty!
Why
Making
is there
money?
commercials? on that?
Because we make money on our channels. Oh, that's Shelley Carney.
I know there
Yeah,
shouldn't
well,
be commercials on that.
They're just that's
It's not
YouTube.
monetized.
That's YouTube making money.
Ah, how dare they?
Okay, hold on. Let me say did it here. Okay.
You want the treasure hunt book? Okay, he wants the gypsy.
Okay.
Gypsy
So tell him
Kiss.
where to send that information for me.
All right. Would you email to the address on the screen?
No. I want
What?
it. I want that a text message, please. It's easier
Oh,
to
you
get
want
into.
it? Text Toby at the phone number on the screen, 1-505-750-2744 with your name and address, and
Sure.
we will send you the book.
And remind me which book you want in that Copper Dan. And if you add your email to that, when I print the shipping label, it will inform you of when I print it, when I get it to the post office, how it's moving along. So let me share this with you. This is a sample of New Mexico Media Makers. This was their host.
Got the audio off.
Pardon me.
You got the audio off.
I know.
Oh, okay.
I want to keep it off until I can. So let me take this down so you can see it. And those were our hosts, Mike Gaba and Catherine
Palafis
Palafis. Yeah.
Jones.
So
Palafis Jones.
Here we go. I'm just going to play a little bit of it. You can see these guys. They were so adorable together.
Welcome back to New Mexico Media Makers. Joining us now is local actor, writer, and producer Mike Ostrowski. Mike, thank you
Hello.
for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So we hear you've
She
got
was
some
friends
great
with Mike.
news to share with us on a film you helped produce and star in. Tell us about this film.
Yeah, the film is called Those That Play Your Clowns. It's a quote from Hamlet, and it's the debut short of a new production company that I helped begin. It's called Reflection Films, and we have a clip for you of actually it's a speed reel of Reflection Films' work.
All right, let's roll that reel for Reflection Films.
Anyway, this is somebody else's work, so.
Well, yeah, but Mike was in it, right?
Mike's in it.
All right, so I'm going to move this forward. So we were friends with a lot of different filmmakers, and they were just really good people to work with.
Those That Play Your Clowns, which is the one that we officially debuted with, and we sent to a bunch of film festivals.
So Shelley, again, handled production. I did things like lighting and camera switching. We had 3 cameras. That photograph in the background is a photograph of the Albuquerque downtown, and I took that picture and I decided to use that. It's a green screen, but the picture is projected on the green screen. So that was New Mexico Media Makers. It was a lot of fun, and they were all in the film industry, and we interviewed all kinds of people, all ages, actors, producers, directors. John Hendry, who was the head of the union at that time, a couple of the educators. So we
One who was in theater, ran a theater group.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun.
But I was part of several of his films.
So do me a favor. I need to package Steve M's too. So give me another AGK so I can get, because that's what he wanted.
Okay.
And we need to sign him before they go out. All right.
Okay.
That's why
I'll
I was
sign him
wondering.
before I leave.
All right.
All right. I think that's all we have for tonight, unless there's any other
Let
comments
me
you
make
need to answer.
sure. John Miller looks like it's in the background. Yeah, it does. Albuquerque is beautiful at that time of the evening because all the buildings. You know what, John Miller? I have a raised face for radio too, and I don't give a damn. You'll have to just deal with
be
it.
on video.
She's
anyway.
going to be with me, and if you don't want to look at me, you can always look at her. Yeah. So I'm the beauty, she's the beast, for God's sakes. Daly says, looks like background.
Did you say
Okay.
I'm the beauty and she's the beast?
Yeah, I said that wrong, didn't I?
Did you say that?
It was not intentional. Sorry. All right, let me take down the banners.
All right, guys, we're going to be back Saturday night with more
News and
of
views.
News and Views. And again, News and Views is where we share our personal news, our personal updates. We share local news. We share Fen news. We share world news and national news. So if you like to talk about the news and have a conversation about it, then please do join us for that. If all you want to talk about is Fen, then join us for the Fen portion, and then you can, scoot on out. That's fine.
Yeah, but you want to stick around for the prizes because we always give away prizes at near the end of the show.
But a special prize that we're going to be giving out on Saturday, if we get 100 viewers on Saturday, like we did tonight, we will give away this special edition of A Gypsy's Kiss, where all of the clues and hints are highlighted in yellow so that you'll know what were the clues and hints in the book.
Yeah. So this is one of the ones you can see. It's marked on the front here, not for resale. When you publish a book on Amazon, they send you 5 free copies that you can't resell. It's kind of to look at them and see if you made any mistakes. This is the last one of those 5 copies. And as Shelley said, it's the one that she went through and highlighted all the clues and hints in yellow. And if you remember correctly, when we talked about it, then I did exactly this, and she punched me. And then 3D Bronze says, I got all of, there was 3D Bronze and somebody else that went back and slowed the video down just so they could see where all the hints goes.
What a surprise.
That 3D Bronze, he's a sneaky guy, isn't he?
Yeah, but they weren't the one that found it anyway.
I got to make sure I've got all the comments taken care of here. Like the show will be back, says Copper. See you then. Thanks for the news and updates. Just got home. Thanks for the show. Copper, I hope you don't mind if getting a wrench. I realized that I needed something. I wasn't paying attention, and I knew it was getting pretty sticky wicket out there. So I'm glad that you brought it up, and I hope you use it wisely.
He always does.
He does. Okay. What else? Is that it?
Well, I don't know. Somebody just made a comment before I saw it. You erased it. So let me look over here. Victorio Peak. What was your biggest lesson learned from the AGK hunt?
We didn't make it strong enough. We wrote a book. We wrote what we thought was a pretty good set of clues, and the winner figured it out in 3 days. And I think when we met with him, he said, I had it figured out in 2 weeks. I just couldn't get there. So it was very like, oh, well, we got to get into another business. Apparently we don't have the Forrest Fenn touch. But it was fun.
Writing the book was the most important part for us.
Yeah. I mean, look at us.
Publishing that book.
That was actually our first book.
Was a big deal for us.
We've written 2 books since then. We're probably going to put out another 2 this year. And so it set it off on a different track. The story of A Gypsy's Kiss, I don't know whether I've told you guys, but this story I have told thousands of times. And because it was the name of my boat, and people would say, where does that name come from? So I would bore them for the next 3 hours telling them where it came from.
And if you want to hear more about that particular story, it's in this book.
So it was nice to have the impetus to do it, and it was great to have it because now it's there. It's always going to be on Amazon. And if nobody ever reads it, I'm okay with that. I did my part. And when I die, my children will have something to remember me by besides the 600, 700 videos that we put on YouTube. So there. I think what is this stuff?
What's what?
Memorial Day. We're ahead of the game here, aren't we?
That's right.
Mother's Day.
Cinco de Mayo is tomorrow. Hasta mañana.
So these are all things that StreamYard gives you to, what's this?
It's for Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, okay. Let's celebrate that tomorrow. Have a little video short. Okay, guys, thanks for joining us tonight. We love you. And we will see you again on Saturday night on Headlines News and Views.
Thank you for joining the conversation on Headlines, a Messages and Methods livecast hosted by Shelley Carney and Toby Eunice. Please subscribe and leave a comment or question, and we'll consider your ideas for future shows. Share this show with your family and friends and invite them to become a member of our community. Check the show notes for links and resources, and please come back again.